I think teams around the league treat this weekend or last weekend, it's treated differently, and I'm kind of familiar with really trying to create a mini camp feel. So, we have our 5 draft picks. I believe we're around 17 signed free agents, 22 or so tryout rookies, and then we're allowed 5 veteran tryouts. That kind of makes up the numbers. And, historically, and we talk about this all the time as coaches, for me, my biggest fear is that somebody that's out here for 3 days ends up somewhere else playing well. And so really trying to look at everyone, not just the draft picks, but the guys that are here for 3 days. And the challenge sometimes, because, we're not in pads, if any one of us, we're just here for 3 days, we're going to go pretty hard and try to make an impression. But, the first meeting we're showing them, Adam Thielen was not a signed undrafted free agent. He was a 3-day tryout player. Kyrie Robinson, there's just been a number, our league's had a number of those players. Chris Banjo, who had a long career as a special teams player for me and most recently in Arizona, he went a year without an opportunity and then got a tryout. And so really trying to look at every one of these guys, evaluate them properly with an open mind and knowing that history would tell us that, there's players that get overlooked and it's not a science. So I would say this, yesterday we were inside. The challenge always with these practices are tempo and then educating them on staying up and, working together without pads. I would say in my 16 years, the practice we had yesterday and today, just relative to the OTA tempo, was very good. So we try to show them a lot of film beforehand of what it looks like, because some of them, may be coming from college programs that haven't had practices like this. So I've been pleased that way. Obviously, a lot of teaching going on, and then the PM, we're kind of really in a walkthrough mode. It's kind of a meeting that's outside, where we work on offense or defense, and then the kicking game. So with that, any questions?
What's the smartest thing that one of these guys can do out here for the smartest thing?
The smartest thing? Well, we put up a slide. Good question. How you're being evaluated, and so it's important. I'd want to know that. And, the first thing is, does the player know what to do? So now that's incumbent upon us as coaches. If a player is confused or doesn't know what to do, it's hard to evaluate then that play. So the balance of the right amount of installation and then the player knowing what to do. So I would say knowing what to do, and then, how well is he doing it? So I think there's a little urgency for everyone to study the installation, look at it in the evening, because it's hard to make a good first impression if you don't know what to do. Yeah, listen. The draft class is all, made a number of plays. Unfortunately for Ben DiNucci, it was his first interception, and there was more to that interception if you looked at it. It was a good play by Sanders. It was right in front of Greg Penner, and I was telling Greg before practice how this Ben DiNucci was doing well, and so. I told Ben, I said, he owns Walmart, and if it doesn't work out here, there's, I'm sure, a greeting opportunity somewhere, one of his local stores. So, but it was a good play by Drew. Good break. Marvin had a real good set of plays yesterday. You know, that we're rotating a lot of guys in. And then what we'll do as a staff, you know, we'll have quick lunch and we'll go up there and we'll just sit in that room and watch every rep together, which is a little different maybe than you would do in season. But you're watching it together. You're talking about, you know, who we're looking at, tryout player, signed free agent. We've got 9 or 10 of our own players that are here on roster that are allowed to be here because they don't have a accredited league year. And so, you know, really watching each rep and trying to get a handle on how the guys are doing.
Some of the guys on staff you coach with, obviously, and then others of them you're working with for the first time. So how much of being out on the grass and doing 3 days like
Yeah.
this is about figuring the staff out?
Listen, it's you know, so with our team currently we're in phase 2, and that's simply, you know, we're still lifting, running, doing a lot of that. That's gone well. And phase 2 allows you to get on the field, and it's a little bit more. It's not this. It's football school. But this, and we made this comment in the staff meeting. You know that, you know, we're getting our logistics as coaches where we're at with the stations, where I expect drills to be, where I expect players to be, where I expect what it's supposed to look like. So absolutely, because it's the first time this staff is working together. So I think that is something that is important.
Building off what Parker said, this is the first time we've seen you out and coaching here. Is it starting to feel normal as a coach of the Broncos now?
Yeah, I think so. You know, we get so busy with the routine. The thing with our league is it's so seasonal. You know, the season ends and you're right into free agency. And then from free agency, you go right into the combine draft. So, you know, it feels like we're just finished up with the draft. Obviously, there was a lot of meetings, a lot of film. And so you get into different portions of the season, and now we're into kind of spring training if it was baseball. So, but yeah, I mean, I have a house. I have a car. I know how to get home now. And you know, you're getting into the routine. But there's always that checklist of things that, you know, it's eventually you have to leave at night because, you know, you're not going to be able to get to everything. But I think the staff's done a good job. The ops, all the people, you know, that's another thing. Just, you know, for 16 years, I used to ask Bum to blow the horn, and now I'm asking Flip to blow the horn. So I'm sure a couple times I probably yelled Bum. But, I mean, there's all those things. You know, everybody that's working to put this together, there are little things that come up that you tweak or correct. But the fields are in great shape. The facility setup's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, all of that, and I can only reference, again, I go back to that first exposure as a young coach in 2006 post-Katrina, where it was a much different situation going into a team, you know, that had so much happen to them the year before. This is, it's different. But yeah, I think I'm getting settled in.
How's Randy Gregory coming along?
Randy's doing well. Phase 2, he's been here. You know, he's in good health. He's, you know, we're not, again, in phase 2. We're doing a lot of the teaching, but yeah, he's doing well and looks good.
You mentioned the 5 pro tryout spots. What went into the process of bringing him here and deciding on him?
Yeah, great question. I probably don't have a fair answer because this is the press conference that I always know I'm going to get like a local question, and I'm not going to be able to reference the name. I mean, I've got everything here, my tip sheet, my highlights, and I would say this, just relative to the 5 veteran players, you know, generally speaking, they're younger players, and generally speaking, man, we've had a grade maybe on them when they were drafted. We've had a little bit more exposure. They've been in preseason games. And so our personnel, as you're rounding out the camp depth chart and you're going through it all, it's not just need, but it's like, hey, and I said this in the beginning, we're rooting for every one of these guys to do well. Like all the support staff, everything that goes into this, we're wanting to see these guys have a chance to make it. And so I would say, to answer your question, a past familiarity with the player, a college scout who had a good grade, exposure maybe to preseason. We try to talk all the time about a vision when we come up with players, even when we draft players. What's the vision? What's the year one vision? What's the year two vision? How do we see this player? And the same takes place when we're talking about these guys that are trying to make it in 3 days. So a lot of stress. We understand that, but we kind of put the numbers in front of them, and we just talk about. Fortunately, in my history in New Orleans, number of free agents on opening day rosters in 15 years, we were first. Number of undrafted free agents played the most amount of snaps in their first year, we were first. And so when you're on the phone after the draft and you're recruiting, having some type of data, but having 16 years of that to convince a player to come, because once they get here, and I mean this, once they get here, there's a tape on their helmet with their name, and now we just go by what we see, and how they got here at this point is of no importance to us. And oftentimes in our league, mistakes are made, maybe in a draft pick. In 2007, we drafted a running back out of Ohio State in the 4th round. And then we signed an undrafted running back, Pierre Thomas, after the draft. Now, usually when you draft a player at a certain position group, like we draft Riley Moss, it's hard for us to get on the phone and find corners because they know you drafted one. But we had drafted a running back in the 4th round, and Pierre Thomas came, and clearly middle of training camp, he was performing better. And so we cut the 4th round pick and kept Pierre, and 2 years later he's in the NFC Championship game, returning a kick in overtime to the 42-yard line, and then converting a 4th and 1, and then becoming a real important part of our team. You have to just go by what you see, and there's mistakes obviously that occur every year in the draft. But the key is not to compound them and then continue to try to force the player. Yeah, look, good question. I think we've got a few here we're looking at this camp. I feel real good about our group of veterans that are here in the building. When we signed Samardzija, this is a guy that gave us, flexibility. We know that he can play and be an every down back. Our current starters are doing extremely well. I would tell you that we expect him to be ready for the start of training camp, and that's good news. Javante, yeah, his rehab's going well, and I don't want to speak for him or Bo or anyone else, but we get the daily reports. So, and look, we're pretty tight-lipped relative to information going out, but I've read a lot, but I think his rehab's going well. Yeah, I think. Look, I think there's a good chance that, if a player's not ready at the start of training camp, he goes to PUP. We're hopeful that he's someone that might not have to go to PUP. So that's good news, and in the meantime, the rest of these guys we're looking at closely, and I'm getting to know them. You know,
Did you sign Sunday with the idea he could be an every down guy?
we signed him because we knew he was durable, reliable. He played on first and second down. He played quite a bit of third down. If you really look at the snaps for Cincinnati, and so, you know, we felt like we got another solid runner, and you guys have been around him, who's built in a strong way. So there's a lot of things he does well. And look, when we signed him, you know, there's still uncertainty, and I was taught, you know, a long time ago, you know, stack them up at that position. It's a tough position in our league.
Coach, the schedule was released a couple of days ago. What were your initial reactions to that? Anything that stood out?
Yeah, I would say, if this makes sense, I felt like it was very unremarkable. I mean, it was like when I looked at it all, it was, I don't want to use the word calm, but I mean, I don't know that anything stood out. I look at three things right away when the schedule comes out. You know, where's the bye at? And we're at mid-season. That's fine. Travel logistics. I think we've got a couple of East Coast games where we might go, you know, 2 days in advance. Miami early on. Buffalo Monday night. You know, so that creates that little shorter window. Our schedule will be different than anything you're used to. You know, if we end up flying home and landing after 2 a.m., we're probably going to stay in this, you know, so we'll probably stay in Buffalo after that game, fly back Tuesday, players will be off Wednesday, and then push the work week back a day. But outside of that, you know, we're on the rotation of the 9 home games, you know, versus the 8. But I didn't. I just felt like so that's good. I mean, I didn't look at anything and just say, "Wow, you know, we've got, you know, 4 games that we're scheduled to play on prime time. That's great." Just, you know, for me, looking at what is it, 220 or 225, like getting used to that being the baseline, you know, is different because my whole career it's always been 12 noon or 1. I haven't coached out west, so and then when those times start changing, that's usually a good thing, you know.
When you have a job guy that sort of pops or that you like, are those normally difficult calls of like, hey, we want to see a little bit more of this guy, or does a guy normally jump out enough that you decide, hey, this?
Well, look, I think probably a little bit of both. I mean, some guys jump out right away. Man, I can recall sitting in meetings where it was close to whether we were going to, you know, because if someone comes in, someone goes out, right? You know, so it's not just bring them along. You're trying to bring, you know, the right group of 90 when you get down to it. So that's the biggest goal here, though, is really trying to make sure we don't read about one of these guys that was here today somewhere else. And so that weighs on you. And sometimes someone jumps out really clear.
Yeah.
And then other times, maybe it's the second day when we look at this film. And maybe it's, maybe nothing happens, and then a week from now something happens. But they all are making impressions. And that's important.
No logo on the helmets for practice?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm not, it's the spring, and so the equipment guys got to begin putting stuff on helmets or not, and I'm just used to, there's nothing significant about that other than it's really just simply, I think, like a functional decision that let's make sure we got the tape on the front with their last name, and then, you know, training camp start the same way, and at some point, you know, we'll put the logos on the helmets. it's probably just because that's what we've always done, and it's, you know, easier for the equipment room. And it's not like this, hey, you haven't earned your, because these logos aren't going to be on for any of them this whole offseason. I mean, there's just no reason. I think everyone knows they're all Denver Bronco players. There's no confusion. So, but I think more just practical. Yeah, I think I don't think it's been announced yet. We're on the road with 2 games, and I think the goal is to have a joint practice with the Rams. Sean and I have talked, and then I know that you know, obviously the ownership groups are connected, and Les and George. So there's been no announcement made, but I think our hopes and goal is to have, you know, a chance to practice here. I wasn't here last year, but I think you did it with Dallas. And so our goal is to have a joint practice with Los Angeles, and then play that 3rd game. Yeah, so I said this after the draft. I felt like he was one of those players when you really begin doing not just the mocks, but you start really studying where players are going to fall, where we were picking in the 3rd round. He was someone that we felt and hoped that would be available. You know, he's in good shape. He's a guy that I would say is a smooth mover. He can run. He can run fast, and he's prototype. And you hear me say that. You know, he's over 6 foot. And so he's also someone I think that learns pretty quickly. And so I think you see some of his athleticism even in these special team drills. When we watch it on tape, you know, he's someone that moves well and has that, you know, the athleticism needed to play corner, which, you know, probably is one of the more athletic positions in our game.
Sean, how do you balance how much football you want to do at a rookie minicamp versus just orientation and classroom?
Yeah, well, there's a little bit of everything. These have changed over the years for me, and you kind of change with it. So essentially, they report, you know, Thursday. They get physicals. There's a meeting at night just to go through what the weekend is going to be like. Then Friday there's meetings. There's used to be 2 practices. Now it's like a practice and then a walkthrough. They'll be in meetings this afternoon. And so, look, part of the orientation is, you know, prepping them. For a lot of them, they're not used to an open locker room. And so I think I like all of you guys, but I was not trying to throw anyone a bone. This is really trying to get them prepared for you guys coming into the locker room. And there's going to be a $50 gift card awarded to the most generic answer. You know, so when you guys ask them, do you see yourself in a starting role this year? Or how do you see, you know? So I'm hoping to get a real good one, you know, something super cliche and just real boring, and then, you know, we'll give someone a gift card. But no, I think it's all of it. It's getting prepared, and then also understanding, hey, you're currently behind the group that's been here, and so that you're not going to make it up this weekend, but you're currently behind that group relative to conditioning level, a lot of things. And so it's beginning that process of the physical, the mental, and then the stuff that's outside of football, you know, getting acclimated to, you know, the way we want to do things. And so the itinerary, you know, is always tinkered with. And each year we look at it and adjust it and change it. Sometimes we change it because rules change, but there's a balance to all of it. And you know, we're trying to bring them up to speed as quickly as possible.
You talked about the
It's a good question. You know, all of us, all the coaches, when we first arrived, we go up a set of steps, and like for 2 weeks, every one of us was looking at each other like, this is nuts, you know, and then pretty soon it goes away. So we talk a lot about hydrating and, you know, getting acclimated. I think generally speaking, I'm not an expert on that, but you know, when we traveled here, for instance, we'd spend a lot of time discussing, do you come 2 days early, or do you come your normal day early? And, you know, the experts would say, the only way to get acclimated would be, and you can't, but you'd come 10 days early, right? And then, well, then come as late as possible and make sure then you're hydrating. And so making sure that they understand that. And then obviously the benefits of then being here on a constant basis. And then this is your baseline. And then when you do then travel to sea level, I mean, so many of our Olympic athletes train at altitude that hopefully there's a benefit there. And so, yeah, we I mean, we talk about it.
You cut Jake Martin earlier in the year this week. Why? Do you feel covered at that position where you are?
Yeah, and look, things are in flex here. We're in that process where some of these guys might come right back. I mean, it's the hard thing when you're trying to manage the numbers of bringing in signed. If you sign someone, an undrafted free agent, to a contract, he goes to your numbers. So there'll be a couple players that might, you know, all of a sudden be coming back to us in a week. And I don't want to go any further than that, but it varies with each player. And I know Jake was one of them.
Thank you very much, Coach.
All good? All right, thank you.